Lord and Miller, man, they're out. Ron Howard in to direct Han Solo.
Untitled Han Solo spin-off Star Wars film. Phil Lord and Chris Miller.
It's supposed to be coming out next May,
Right.
but filming was supposed to end in about 4 weeks, 3 weeks.
Few weeks left of shooting, plus already pre-planned weeks of reshoots, which is pretty standard. So there's still like 2 months left of shooting, more or less. Plus post-production.
So what are your initial thoughts on this?
Well, obviously, when you hear that a big, high-profile movie, especially something like the Han Solo movie that gets so much attention and people really care about how it comes out, when any movie of that status loses its director, or in this case, directors, well into shooting, it's definitely cause for concern. This harkens back to Superman 2, when Richard Donner got, discredited, basically. But and furthermore, these guys got picked as director, and Lucas specifically on board with their choice.
Right.
But as you hear more about the story, and there's different takes from different outlets, and you can definitely tell where what camp is sending which leak, stuff like that. But as you try and paint the whole picture, it definitely seems that Lucasfilm tried to make it work, and then eventually they just had to pull the plug.
Right. One of the reports was that it seemed like Kathleen Kennedy and the rest of Lucasfilm were waiting for a sit-down meeting with Lord and Miller that never came. It's like, what were they waiting for? You pick these guys out, and from that my perspective on that, if you hand the keys to these guys, you gotta let them drive the car. And you're kind of saying, like, take your perspective and use that to drive this movie, which Lord and Miller have a very specific and unique perspective. Take this way so far in. It just seems like they weren't really thinking ahead to maybe we need to have more of a hand in this than we're going to actually start out with.
I think Lucasfilm has their, they have their bar that they want, they want these movies to come out a certain way. And specifically and you'll hear people criticize, how the big studios, there's no creative freedom.
Right.
Marvel's been criticized for this in the past, and that's why, people would leave these projects like Joss Whedon or never take them, like Edgar Wright, because they don't want that much control. But in this movie, this is really what I first started, to think about is this Han Solo movie. A lot of people didn't want this to exist.
No.
Because, Han is the most popular character in Star Wars, more or less, and he's so beloved that to do a spin-off origin story just seemed really risky and probably not worth the effort. But now you're mad that Lucasfilm was being very conservative with the role and the film, and they want to make sure it comes out a certain way. I don't see how you can play both sides of that coin.
Right.
And especially, read more about it. Lawrence Kasdan, who wrote the script for Han Solo, and of course he wrote Empire and Jedi, so he's, basically one of the most important people to Star Wars' whole existence. He was not happy that Lord and Miller were kind of improving and going off script, which should be on Lucasfilm. That's how they make their movies, so they clearly were a bad fit from the start, but they weren't following the script, and that's why they pulled the plug, among other things. And then you hear from the Hollywood Reporter that the crew burst out in applause once they found out Ron Howard's taking over, which is freaking crazy.
Yeah.
But it just seemed like the way Lord and Miller make movies, in which, of course, they've been very successful with both Jump Streets and Lego Movie.
Yep.
It just doesn't seem like that style, which is more like a Judd Apatow.
Right.
I don't think it just fits this kind of production, especially when Lucasfilm has such high expectations and standards. That's what I think.
Yeah, actually, I think when they announced they were doing these spin-off movies, we had kind of said, do we really, actually on the Nowstalgia pod, soundcloud.com/nowstalgiapod, we actually talked about how we didn't know if this was such a great idea. And then Alden Ehrenreich was cast, and we were like, this seems like a good casting. He was good in
Hail Caesar.
Yeah, Hail Caesar. But I think, kind of going off your point, if Lucasfilm has this expectation, which they obviously deserve after creating one of the biggest franchises in the world.
Most valuable IP in human history.
Absolutely. They need to be more upfront with their directors. If they want to take somebody like this, they need to be saying, all right, we'll give you the keys, but you need to be on board with meeting these certain expectations of being on set, which maybe they did, and Lord and Miller kind of are just so kind of by the cuff that they didn't follow through with that. But in any case, it seems like there needs to be a little more leadership from the beginning, like on these films, which is okay. Like it's a learning process, obviously.
That's a good point, because you could think about Force Awakens, which turned out well in terms of the whole franchise. That movie was more or less rewritten. Michael Arndt, who from Little Miss Sunshine and Toy Story 3, his script was more or less thrown out.
Right.
Luke was the big focus of that, and JJ and Lawrence Kasdan, really found the movie in the writing room and then on the editing cutting room floor and whatnot. And then same thing with Rogue One, where Gareth Edwards kind of stepped aside at the end for Tony Gilroy to kind of be like, all right, here's like our big boy, knows how to make big movies. Gareth Edwards, we like you and we like what you've done, but we want this guy to really finish it up for us. And then think about where we're at with Han Solo and the talk that they needed an acting coach for Alden Ehrenreich. Once production's already started, we know he can act,
right?
But I don't know how that's anyone's fault but Lord and Miller. If you're not getting what you want from Han Solo, and he's being like a quote Ace Ventura-like character, why wouldn't Lucasfilm jump in?
Yeah,
they're not going to sell you the brand, especially if it's this bad. And like I don't care if it's about creative freedom. I take this by a case-by-case basis. It's like with Han Solo, they're going to be conservative.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's worth noting that there's been no friction regarding Rian Johnson in The Last Jedi at all.
True.
And I think a big part of that is because he's a more established filmmaker who's worked his way up and made like 8 movies before he took on this blockbuster. So
it'll be really interesting
a lot going on
to see how this comes out. And if this film flops, I don't know. There's going to be a lot of backlash because Han Solo is such a beloved character within this universe. And I think just overall an iconic movie character in general, that if this doesn't go well, it's going to be pretty frustrating for fans.
Yeah, and I felt this way in general before this came out, but I would not be opposed to this coming out in December instead of May.
No, me neither.
Let's keep the 1 year.
Yeah.
Why not?
I agree with that. I was actually thinking they need to push back production and let Ron Howard get his hands on this a little bit more.
Yep.
Ron Howard voiceover, they did not let him get his hands on this anymore.
If they do go back, they'll be coming out like I think either a week after Aquaman debuts.
Oh.
So that would be quite the blockbuster battle.
That'd be pretty interesting.
And also DC would probably not be too happy about that. But
pretty interesting.
There we are.
Well,
let me know what you think. Tweet us at Nowstalgia Pod.
Absolutely.